next guest amongst the Brooklyn Tech students is Nufisa Patwary, who is going to be studying computer engineering at Stony Brook University. Hello, Nufisa.
Hi, Mr. Arvin. Hi, everyone.
Let's kick it off at the very beginning. So, you as a middle schooler and I guess as a freshie at Brooklyn Tech were enduring COVID and all the, I guess, the adversities that came with COVID, from lockdowns and the for me the nightmare of remote learning, which for me was the worst thing ever. Uh, what what was the experience like? Because I know a lot of people are wondering as they look at sort of the Gen Z kids, as to like how did you do it? What did it look like to be learning in this environment?
It was honestly like such a bizarre experience because I remember the first 2 weeks of remote learning. There was just so much like change from being in class, like waking up like an hour before school starts and then getting ready, going outside and wearing like outside clothes and then seeing everyone in person. And then it just very quickly within the span of like 1 week changed to waking up like 10 minutes before class starts and going to a computer the first thing in the morning, which I just at the time it didn't feel that weird because I grew up playing a lot of video games in my free time. So I was on the computer a lot, but then I think about it now when I was younger and I think about how I woke up and that was the first thing I did because I think that's crazy. Um at the time when I was doing remote learning, my first year of remote learning was actually completely asynchronous. So that March when school shut down until June,
This is you in
seventh
eighth
grade,
grade, seventh grade.
seventh grade,
Okay.
yeah. So from March, this is when lockdown first started. So from March to June, I actually had no Zoom classes. So we only had like work, which I think was specific to my school because everyone else I knew at different schools had actual Zoom classes. So my first COVID experience was very isolating because we had like meetings, but they were all optional. Like they were not classes, they were more like discussions. And so the way we communicated was through Google Classroom, through we made like discussion posts on Google Classroom. Our teacher would post a do now for attendance every morning with like a very specific question that we would answer in the comments. And that's just what our world was like. We just interacted like that and we did our homework on like Google Docs that had like questions on it. But then the year after that was when we started doing like Zoom lessons, and then my school switched to hybrid learning, which was like half in person, half at home, which I really liked. I did do that. There were only like 8 of us in that class who were going in person and then doing half the classes at home. It was very relaxed, but it was still very weird because even when we were in class, we were not allowed to go near each other. And we had like desks between each other. We had to have our masks on. When we had lunch, like everyone was even more isolated because we didn't have our masks off. Or we had our masks off, so they wanted us to be even farther apart. And the whole thing was just like it was just such a weird experience that I don't think I would ever want to relive again. Like
Yeah.
now that I think about it before, I'm like, I don't know how I did that.
The 2 weeks completely asynchronous sound very, very lonely. It sounds very
Yeah,
lonely.
it really was. Yeah.
And it sounds almost, I'm trying to find a watered down version of this word because the word might be too aggressive, but I would say a little dangerous, because some people, their family life is um, less safe,
Hmm.
and sometimes they'll be living in a very, very, very small apartment with people fighting and things like that. Like, how could you possibly learn in that environment? And you, by law, by mandate, couldn't leave the house for or the apartment for periods of you know weeks and weeks and weeks. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy that everyone isn't crazy, to be quite
Yeah.
honest. Especially all of you, because as someone who's 158 years old, like I've lived enough life to know like social models, but around between basically 6th grade and 10th, 11th grade, there's a big shift that boys and girls go through, which is basically, instead of modeling your behavior from your parents or from your guardians, would be more accurate, you turn to your cohorts, which makes sense from like an evolutionary standpoint. You're not trying to survive in the environment of your of your guardians. You're trying to survive in the environment your cohort is going to create. But you were all denied that. You were denied that.
Hmm.
I know a lot of boomers say this and it's weird, but you didn't grow up on TikTok, but you grew up on basically a digital social environment, which, it's a very unique. We've never seen that kind of thing. So the fact that you guys can like actually socialize and have friend groups, which you definitely do, like it's good. It's very relieving. I'm relieved that you guys didn't end up being, out of your minds.
I'm relieved too.
Yeah. Speaking of staying in your mind, do you have any sort of ideas as to how you did it? Like, how did you, over those 4 years, keep your head on your shoulders? Because you weren't just at a school, you were at Brooklyn Tech, and not to gas or glaze, as you guys say, Brooklyn Tech so much, but it's an incredibly difficult environment with so many different obligations happening simultaneously, and many obligations that other schools don't have. So it's a lot of pressure, and everyone at the school has gotten into the school. They had to, jump through all these hoops to get in, not just the SHSAT, and that creates an environment of like hyper competition and a certain mind state that you're surrounded by. So how did you keep yourself, like normal over those 4 years, and how was that development from year one to year four?
So I actually was really bad at that during my freshman year. I think a lot of that came from the fact that I was coming from quarantine and like only going to school like a few days a week, but also because at this point my chronic illness was flaring up a lot. So I was
Mhm.
just like physically very tired, and I got really unlucky my first year, I think, because my schedule was honestly very difficult. I had class from periods 2 to 9, and then I had lunch, and then I had another class.
Oh,
Yes,
what?
yeah, I had 9 period lunch my freshman year, which made it very difficult.
Oh my God. So it's like you're accidentally intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So
Okay.
my first year, I was actually really bad at keeping up with things. I did absolutely no clubs.
Well,
I
because you're
didn't,
malnourished by period
yeah.
seven. Like,
I did no clubs. I didn't really make friends, honestly. I think I had like one friend, but we weren't really friends. We would just talk in class if we needed to. So my first year at Brooklyn Tech was actually really hard. I remember the summer of my freshman year afterward. I was like, thank God I'm out of there. And I really didn't like it. But it
no.
also, yeah, it was also hard because at the time, like there were really strict rules in my household at that time. So like even if I wanted to do clubs, I really couldn't. And I was also, I think this is a very big like dragging effect of the quarantine, but like during quarantine, I was so ingrained into this friend group with like one person from my middle school and then like a lot of people I met online like in the years prior. So because I was so ingrained into that friend group, I kind of fell into it even during Brooklyn Tech because I was so used to just talking to them that I didn't feel like branching out and talking to new people. So I found myself going home and then immediately like getting on a call with them and then talking about how school went instead of trying to hang out with people. Um,
Well, there's a positive to that because at least
yeah.
there's the catharsis of like releasing the stresses or the goods of the day and having someone sort of celebrate your wins and kind of uplift or lift you up from the losses, the defeats and things of that sort. So that's good. But it wasn't originally it wasn't with other techies.
Yeah. So I really struggled making friends in my freshman year. I think a big part of that was because I was actually new to things like TikTok and Instagram my freshman year. And I remember going into tech, like asking people for their number and no one would give it to me because they were like, oh, what's your Instagram? I'm like, I don't have one. So I made one just so that people I could like get contact with people. And even then, like I just could not find myself like fitting in with any group. But academically, I think because I spent so little time like with like conversing with people, like I was doing fine academically. I was missing a lot of school by the end because I would just wake up and feel exhausted and not want to go to school because like I used to go to school like 10 minutes away from where I live. now I commute like almost an hour, and it was just so tiring. And then I come home at like 5 o'clock every day, even when I didn't have clubs. So that made it just very difficult and like very demotivating. Like I just felt like I did not want to go.
So much novelty and so much stress simultaneously. Yeah.
Yeah, so first year, like it was definitely very difficult. But then sophomore year was a lot better because it was at that point where I had like a weird fallout with one of my like previous friends that I was just like really close with. And so that kind of forced me to talk to more people. But also, I think by the time I was in sophomore year, I felt a lot more like inspired to actually go and make connections. And I was really lucky that in sophomore year, my I had health and AP computer science principles, and those two classes had the same people in them. So we started and ended together. So I think that really helped because I had the same people around me for two classes, and that really encouraged me to be friends with those people. And those are still some of my closest friends now. And so sophomore year is also, I had a normal lunch period. So I would sit with people at lunch, and that helped me
Mhm.
make friends too. So during
What were the
sophomore
two
year,
classes that you saw the same people in your
it
sophomore
was
year?
health and AP computer science principles.
So one of the best things about that, if I can speak at it from the pedagogical standpoint, is it reinforces the knowledge. Because if you learn about, let's say, AP Lang and it stays in AP Lang, there isn't anything sort of in your mind that tells you as a human that this is something that's relevant outside of AP Lang. But when you are discussing it with friends in another class or at lunch or after school, then it gains relevancy that's beyond the four walls of whatever class in which you're being taught.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think like with those classes, especially like when you're learning how to code for the first time, it's not easy. And so because of its difficulty, like we were forced to like talk to each other because everyone needed help from each other,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is like one of the actually really good benefits about being in not in a competitive environment, but in an environment that's very rigorous because it really encourages people to talk to each other because it's very difficult to like do well alone.
Not
Yeah.
everyone would be encouraged to talk to one another. Some people would collapse into themselves and be like, "I got to do this all myself. I gotta figure out what to do." And other people might be like, "Okay, well, I can ask some other people and get different
That's
insights
true.
on this." So it's good
Yeah.
that you should give yourself credit for that, for having the insight to be like, you know what, I'm gonna ask other people and give them my opinion, and we'll see what value this exchange will bring.
So like that, just like the constant seeing the same people, that really helped in sophomore year. And then also with my AP World class, I would do AP World like classwork, and then the people I went to AP World with, we would go to lunch together and then do our AP World homework there, like together. So even though we were still doing like work, we were also like what you said, we were reinforcing what we learned in our history class, but we were also there together. And I think just being in each other's presence was very helpful in getting us comfortable with each other because it was the first year that we had met. And so sophomore year was just really helpful.
Grace Chen called it in the other podcast, uh, called it trauma bonding.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay,
I think
interesting.
I think if you ask the people that I had AP World with, I think they would say similar thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it is true. I mean, what is it? It was either Plato or Aristotle or Socrates, one of those lovely Greeks. It was, he said, uh, I hope I don't butcher this one. A common enemy unites the bitterest of foes. Not that you're all foes, but when you are all struggling under the same thing, the tethers between yourselves become more and more tight because you
Yeah.
need it to be.
Yeah. That sounds like trauma bonding.
Yeah, it does sound like drama bonding.
Yeah. But yeah, like sophomore year was finally the year because I didn't end 10th period. I ended 8th period. So my curfew was still very early, but it was like I had more time now after school, so I would actually go out and do things, which was really helpful. And
Mhm.
then academically, again, like I was able to not like this time not only do well because I was just not doing anything else, but also because I was getting help from the people around me, and that helped a lot. And that summer I worked an internship which I had a lot of fun with. Grace was there too. We worked at the same place.
What was the internship called?
It was for a social media company.
Ah, okay, never mind. I was thinking of another program.
Yeah. So we worked there. We didn't really work together, but we were there. And that was really fun. And I was out a lot that summer, which made me really happy. And then, but that summer was kind of hard because that's when my stepdad had left our family like very suddenly. And in a way, like that
Right
was
before your junior
obvious.
year, right?
Yeah, right. Literally like 3 weeks before my junior year started. So that was obviously very difficult,
Yeah.
but in a way, that was actually a very freeing moment for my family because he just made our family like so like not close together anymore. Like before my mom got remarried, when she was still a single mom, like after my biological dad died, my brothers and I were so close, especially
Yeah.
my younger brother and I, because we're so close in age. We're only a year and a half apart. But
And you're
then
older, you have older
yeah, I have
siblings
an
too.
older brother, but
Yeah.
basically because this man was in our apartment and he was very hostile, not physically, but more like mentally,
Hmm.
he really like that environment and that force like really discouraged us from leaving our rooms. And to add on to quarantine, like that just made us all really drift apart. So that moment was very difficult for my family because like a lot of our finances changed, like like our living situation changed a little bit. But in the long run, like I know it was for the better because I feel like so much more free like in my own home, which is exactly how it should be.
Right. Can I ask if you feel stronger for that kind of unique challenge to have happened? Because yes, you're saying it was altogether a net positive, but any sort of change like that is obviously difficult. I mean, there's a reason why unfamiliar things activate the parts of your brain that are related to threat responses. We don't like unfamiliarity. And it makes sense. Familiar is what has led us to continue living. So
Hmm.
we get nervous by it. But do you think that the difficulty of that was something that became, for lack of a better word, power for you eventually?
Yeah, I think that that was one of the things. It was just such a like unique challenge that I hadn't experienced before, and I think that really helped me mature like in the most textbook definition way possible. Like when adults think of children maturing, like I think that's the moment or that's somewhere I really took on a lot more responsibility in my household, not like it was a burden, but rather because I felt empowered by the fact that I was able to help my family in a way just by stepping up and doing something. And so ever since that, I still have those same responsibilities, but they make me feel powerful because I know that I'm filling in the shoes of somebody who was doing these things, but not actually benefiting our family. And then there is a sort of like feel of like almost like, look, I'm gonna do it better. Like, so that also makes me feel powerful, but not in a way that like, not in like complete spite, but rather more like, I know that I'm gonna be able to do this thing that you didn't think I was able to do, and I'm gonna do it like for the people who like I love the most. So just like any challenge that like people overcome, I feel like I did grow a lot from it. And I think of myself like before, like during sophomore year, like I feel very different now from when he was still in our family. So I definitely think that's changed.
Yeah. And I hope that anyone listening understands that all adversities have the potential to become strength. It just,
Hmm.
and that's not to trivialize any difficulty or to be like, yeah, look for difficulty because difficulty is there. It'll happen no matter what. Uh, and just the understanding that, you know, there's no such thing as growth without some form of struggle. Now, the struggle can be more benevolent struggle, like lifting a dumbbell or, memorizing my 1,000 vocabulary words or something of that sort. Uh, but just to understand that, in all the difficulties, there's always a little beam of light that you are getting stronger, sharper, smarter, whatever the thing is. But I know that I've used that when I had difficulties. There's always one part of me that knows that, and it's almost like a meta narration. I say it to myself, like I'm gonna be so much stronger once I'm on the other
Hmm.
side of this damn thing.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
Can I tell you how I've seen you develop in that the 1 year that I've had you? Of course, you continue developing in senior year, and I got to see blips of that too. But the in my AP line class, can I tell you?
Yes, please.
So, do you remember your very first assignment in my class?
Was it the letter to you?
So, I'm going to read a quote from you if you don't mind.
Okay.
I can see you already like
Okay, yeah, no, I'm ready.
the body language was so clear. You could just it goes from completely open to just
No,
playing
I don't
defense.
have any like memory of what I wrote.
Well, here it is. It was I love debating, sharing my opinion, and writing, even though I'm not that good at it. I would say the biggest change that I've seen that I've had the privilege of seeing is your confidence. I think you've gotten much more confident. And I don't mean confidence like arrogance. I mean confidence like you look at a difficulty, acknowledge it as a difficulty, but have the assurance that eventually you have the capacity to handle it. And you say or you said that you weren't good at sharing your opinion or writing or debating, yet on an historic AP Lang exam where 54% only passed, 54% passed, which is so low, you got a perfect score on it. So unless someone else stood in for you for the AP Lang exam, you clearly have these skills and these capacities. And I saw it develop. I'm so grateful for having that you know, like honored vantage point to see it happen. And I think some of it is definitely the friend group that you had, or you have. I think some of it is just this intrinsic, when a difficulty occurs, it is indeed difficult, but I will survive through it. I will handle it, and perhaps I'll be stronger on the other side.
I really appreciate that. No, yeah,
Do you disagree or?
no, I agree. And I think I'm like really grateful to hear that because that's confidence is like something that I felt really bad at the beginning of this year because like last summer just like I went through like my first breakup. It's like so like teen girl drama, but it was with someone I was really close with for like 8 years, I think.
Well, you don't have to trivialize it. I mean, if you really care for someone,
Yeah.
they care for you. You have someone on your team. They're on your team. You feel like a unit, and you create in your sort of your life space a most of the time a greater and greater portion of your own identity is interwoven with someone else. And when that relationship ends, that all of that becomes a void, not just a void,
Yeah.
but a sensitive void.
Hmm.
Where they're like trigger points now. So you
Yeah.
don't have to, sure it's teen girl, like, but people who go through breakups
Hmm.
at, age 30, 50, they also endure that like massive, devastating recalibration.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, yeah, it's also just like a very obvious, it's like a very different change to like being constantly like validated and reassured by someone to not.
Hmm.
So I feel like that kind of affected my confidence going into senior year. But then as I started getting closer with like my very like empowering motivational friends who are very clearly there for me and very
Feel
clearly
free to
want.
shout them out, by the way, if you
Okay,
want.
yeah. So my closest friend Annie Q, she's in Missouri right now. She's at WashU right now. She's like my closest friend. She was the one friend that I really had in freshman year. Like she was like the person I've been closest to throughout all of high school. So her, and then we have like a friend group with our friend Maddie and Fatima, Suchi, and Alice.
Hmm.
We have all been acquaintances since freshman year, but then last year and this year we just became so much closer and we went out a lot. We actually like did so much stuff that we always wanted to do. And that really helped make me feel confident again. And that was actually something I was thinking about recently was like I feel so different in the sense that I feel like I can look at something that I've created or I can listen to something that I've said and I can be proud of it without someone else needing to tell me that they think it's also really good or something like that. And so that was a big lesson that I learned. And so I'm really grateful to hear that you think that within junior year you were able to see my confidence like um
Yeah.
grow and become stronger.
And your voice developed too. I mean, I think your college essay, or the one that you showed me, that was kind of like this this intersplicing between you were baking something, and then we had you were cooking or baking. I can't remember.
I was baking focaccia.
Yeah, and at the same time there were these internal monologues going back and forth, and it it was very interesting. It was like programmatic, the baking part, where there's ingredients, and though there's creativity, of course there is a formula or a process or a procedure, and then like the art part of like your own internal monologue and how to like foreground other components of who you are. And like now articulating that, like that sounds like a great I don't know, like a representation of someone who's going to be very good at computer engineering, because it is
Oh, I hope so.
procedure and programming, but also you want to be able to actually do something with all of that process knowledge of how to code, basically just working with a language or languages, depending on what you're doing exactly. So I think that's very cool, and I look forward to seeing how you culminate with all of this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like that's just like another small thing I've been thinking about recently is like I just realized like I only now made the connection because whenever people ask me why are you studying engineering, I'm like I like working with my hands. But I can't really tell them like why. Like I'm just like okay, that's something I've noticed like this year when I started building with circuits, and that's why I'm not doing like software engineering. Like I wanted to do something physical. But
Hmm.
then I thought about it, and I was like, I spent my entire childhood from like age 5 to now like baking like once a month to like once a
Age
week.
5.
Yeah, I started baking when I was very little. Well, like baking. Like
Okay.
at that point I was like helping like my aunts bake. But I was really into just like doing anything where I could like actually work on it myself and then have something at the end. And so then I don't know why it took me so long to make that connection. I was like, baking and engineering are like the same thing basically, except you just don't eat what you make at the end. Like you have
Yet.
to,
Let's
yeah.
see.
Oh no. Actually, I think those, yeah, I've
3D
been hearing,
printing
yeah,
something, nutrients, I don't know.
yeah.
Coding a hamburger would be such a flex.
Maybe one day I'll be doing that.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that completely makes sense to me, and yeah, it's cool. Like these kind of connections that we have. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Would you say that baking for you is a like a coping mechanism too, like something that helps you like relax and like get stress out?
Yeah, I really like trying like baking like at the end of like a very busy week, and my mom will come in and she's like, "You just like did all this work, like why are you doing more work?" But when I'm baking, like I'm not thinking about any sort of other issues that I have. I'm very focused. I'm very like I don't want to say locked in, but like
Locked
I'm
in.
very locked
You
in.
could say it.
Yeah. But I also really like baking because like it's very like you said like it's programmatic, like there is a clear process but it's not the same thing every time, and then as I'm baking something, even if I baked this is like the third time I've baked it, fourth, fifth time, I can still change something, and that's what keeps me focused on it, that's what helps me like express something in it. And so
And you get lost in it, but
yeah,
you're not like necessarily daydreaming. You're doing something productive. You're kind of like in this Zen state, and at the end, you've accomplished something and you feel better. So there's actually a word for this. There's a word for that sort of phenomenon. Do you know it?
no.
So it's called a flow state,
Okay.
and it was pioneered by this Hungarian American psychologist whose name people have a lot of trouble with. It's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi,
Okay.
and yeah, his work is fantastic, and it's basically one of the theses is that we can enter these states where we are sort of almost in this like dream state of being very productive, but also not very stressed. And at the end of it, we accomplish something that is almost like spiritual, where it's like there's another part of us that's on the other side. Like I get it with writing, and whenever I'm done writing, I feel like sometimes I like look, I'm like, oh, I wrote that, and I have to like remind myself that that was me who did that, because I was so into it that I was kind of daydreaming into the ink. And this sounds like the same thing,
Yeah.
or
No,
very
it is
similar.
very similar. Like Yeah, I like the way that I know that like this is how I feel is because like when I think about when I bake, like previous times I baked, I can't remember what I was thinking. Like I have no memory of like what was going on in my mind other than the fact that I was baking something and then I ate it after. So I think like baking for me, like I've always really liked doing it because I find it fun, but I find it not mentally draining in any way. Like I can just bake.
Maybe replenishing.
Yeah, yeah, actually, yeah. Especially after like a very stressful day. And because like I do software engineering at school, like it's all very like it's very like intense and it's very like okay, you can't mess this part up or like your whole project's gonna break. So like doing baking is like I still have the satisfaction of being able to follow something closely and like measure things out, but it's like it's not going to be very risky if I change something that I haven't tried before. And the worst thing
Yeah.
that can happen is that like it doesn't taste
The
as
kitchen
good.
burns down.
Oh, that too. But it's like I it feels I think it's just like
You said worst, so
it's
worst
very,
logical
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. It's like a science experiment,
Mhm.
and I really enjoy
Where
doing them.
you're supposed to deviate
Yeah.
in let me tell you, I have another student who bakes to stress relief. Her name is Joanna, and she I would know how anxious or stressed she was based on how often she came in offering cookies to people. I was like,
That's
oh,
so
this is like
cute.
the third time this week. She's like, yeah, it's been a tough week. I was
Oh
like, oh,
no.
yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. But for her, same thing. She was like, yeah,
Yeah.
like the, giving myself an hour to do this activity doesn't feel like I'm wasting an hour, but rather that I'm like cleaning up all the other hours. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, wow, that's interesting.
No, I feel her.
So, speaking of, I guess, being very wise in the way in which you use your time, whether it seems like on the outside to people that you're doing another task, but you're actually helping yourself, to um, the power of friendship and making sure your schedule is good and all of this. My final question for you is, what sort of like words of advice or guidance would you offer to anyone who's entering high school or like Brooklyn Tech students in 12th grade or 11th grade when they're worried about colleges, or just any sort of advice you have for high schoolers who are going to be watching this episode?
I think for especially high schoolers who are going to a school like Brooklyn Tech, I know this is such like a repeated piece of advice, but I found myself repeating it to myself a lot this year, which is comparison is the thief of joy, because I didn't agree with that until this school year. It took me a long time, despite having such great friends, like for a long time, like a lot of my self-worth was tied to like my academics or like whatever next like materialistic validation I was going to receive. And I think that's the way for a lot of Brooklyn Tech students because I see it in the way that they act. And so my piece of advice is that if you're near or if you're having to interact with someone that is making you feel bad about yourself in any way in terms of maybe they're comparing or they're being very loud about something that you were not able to do, but they were able to do, you just separate yourself. Like I found myself having to do that a lot this year, especially with college applications. But I think also aside from that, like no one is really going to completely fix your view of yourself. Like even if you have like the most amazing, closest 24/7 person in your life that is going to constantly like reassure you and tell you you're amazing and like be there for you, like you really have to be able to perceive yourself in a certain way to feel that way. And so I also learned that really only this year. But especially with like the whole comparison thing, like you always have to understand that where you're at is not where you're going to end up. Like if you're not happy with your performance on something or like if you're disappointed in something that you've done, it's never really the end of the world. And just because it seems like another person has everything that you want, you do not know like even the surface of like them as a person, their life. And I think the way that I realized that was that I thought about myself and I thought about how people probably perceive me. Like there's so much that they don't know. So situations are always very specific to people and you can really never fully understand them. And so I think that really helped me understand that like I should be grateful for where I am, and it's okay for me to be upset if I like don't do as well as I thought I would, or that, like something didn't go the way that I planned. But I think now I deal with it a lot better because I have this mindset that like, okay, so something didn't go right, but that doesn't mean that like I'm never gonna be able to do this thing that I want to do. Like I feel like that's something very important is that at Brooklyn Tech it's really hard. It's like a big jump from middle school,
Right.
especially senior year. I think senior year is very difficult in general with like college applications,
And then getting
and
the announcements from all the EDs and EAs, and
it's
they're like,
yeah,
"I got into this school," and you want to celebrate your cohorts for their accomplishments, but sometimes people are like pounding their chest, like, "I am the greatest," and you're like,
yeah,
"Okay, well, let me." No matter what, you have this like comparison that's again, it's natural, but to what degree do you allow that comparison to affect you,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Like especially like during December, like all the ED results come out, all the EA results come out, and people like it's inevitable that you will hear about people. Like it's not going to really be possible for you to try to shut yourself out from learning where everyone's going, what everyone's achieved. Like that's not really possible at a school as big and crowded as Brooklyn Tech. But it really is just how you think of it. And especially like specifically to like seniors at Brooklyn Tech, like college, being able to go to college is something that not a lot of people can even do.
Right.
You're go to Brooklyn Tech, like the standards that you have set for yourself are probably like
Astronomic.
yeah, like
Really.
insanely
Yeah.
like high compared to the average student in America. And so you always have to like take a step back and realize that like just because like someone got into school, let's say like you someone got into the school that you want to go to and you didn't end up getting in, that's not going to like that doesn't define you as a person. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean that like your writing sucks. That doesn't mean that like that person is like way smarter than you. It's just like
Right.
a reflection of way too many factors for you to completely put the blame on yourself.
One way to kind of understand it is that no one can really reject you because no one has you. They just get snippets, and they get a very what is it, like a very like angled snippet of you. They don't get to see all the things that make you, and this is quoting your essay, a collector of diverse ingredients, all from different recipes. Like they don't get to see your skills in this and that and that. Your ability to withstand difficulties that perhaps other people would crumble under, but you are like, not that you want to, but you're shouldering it as you're accomplishing other things. So, and this kind of advice, by the way, can be applied to almost anything involving seeking validation from anyone else. Even something as stupid as, and I'm gonna make you cringe right now, but like someone got there was a freshie in one of my classes who got rejected from a girl that he wanted to talk to, and I he was recounting it to me, and I was like, well, she didn't reject you because she doesn't know you. She doesn't know anything about you. She just knows what you look like and your approach towards her. If you think that you're not worthy of love, or at least like attention from this person because they rejected that moment, then it's actually on you. They never had you to begin with. They had one millionth of you at best. At best. So it's something to always consider, is that no one's ever getting the entirety of you. They get snippets of you, and sometimes they come from angles that won't see the best of you, or even like the mediumist of you.
Especially with like college writing, like a lot of the times we write in a way that we think will sound better to the person reading it as opposed to like who we really are. And there's also a lot of pressure to say like certain aspects about yourself because they sound better. And that also like adds to the conversation that like it really like they don't know you. Like they know
Yeah.
what you wrote in like I don't know, the most essays I wrote was like I think eight for one college. But they really don't know that much about you. And there's so much toxic culture around like the names of colleges and like their rankings and things. But at the end of the day, the fact that you're able to receive upper education from anywhere is like such a thing that people really, really want, but a lot of people don't have. And so that in itself is a huge accomplishment. And just because you go to a school where like it seems like everyone's going to like an insanely difficult school to get into, that doesn't make wherever you do like less important. than anyone
Right.
else. And that took me a long time to learn. But like now that I'm saying it, like I can say that like I finally like learn. And that really like helps with making it like easier to not compare yourself with other people and their own accomplishments because you just see
Right.
things like differently and everyone does different things in their life and that's like the beauty of like meeting so many people at Brooklyn Tech is that everyone is so different. You're going to learn about hobbies and interests that you didn't even know existed before. Like that definitely happened to me. Like that's like
Right.
more a comment for people going into high school is that you're gonna meet so many different people and you should just be open to talking to like a lot of different people, even if you don't think just based on your first impression of them that you'll like them. Like it's always worth, maybe not always, but like most of the time, it's worth just trying to talk, especially when you're a freshman, because everyone's in the same shoes.
Yeah. Totally. And again, like, I mean, there'll always be someone who's, faster or stronger or can read the book in a different angle or can solve the equation faster or any of these things. So for you, and especially with things like social media now, you open up any app and you'll see people who are the best of whatever, and now you naturally compare yourself, and it's good for you to remind yourself that no one is you, no one competes with you.
Yeah.
Uh, Nufisa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I can't wait to publish this with all of you on it.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun talking. This is such a cool opportunity.
Thank you. And again, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm obviously invested in all of you succeeding and
Oh,
dominating
thank you.
and all of that. And again, congratulations, and I can't wait
Thank
to see
you.
the next wave of accomplishments.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited. I will keep you updated. I will keep you updated.
And we have our next guest, Demyan Kruglov, who is the only student in this group to be both my ninth grade student and my AP Lang 11th grade student. Demyan is studying mechanical engineering, or is going to be studying mechanical engineering at Northeastern University. Demyan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
That's great. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked everyone else at the start of their interviews, and it's essentially, can you give us kind of a peek into what was going through your mind as you were sort of enduring the pandemic and all of these all the things that came with it? So the lockdowns, the remote learning, all the anger and the fear and the worry, because you were in seventh grade when it began, right?
That's right. Yeah, seventh to eighth grade.
Yeah. So what was going through your mind during that period, all the way up until I guess like 10th grade is when it kind of began to diminish?
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of confusion because it was definitely like a developmental stage for me. Going into teenagerhood or I'm finishing up the preteen stage, and I was just really kind of like conflicted with, who I wanted to be, what my ideals were, what my morals should be, what I wanted even to do in high school. My family was very kind of like academic focused, and I was more artsy. I like to paint a lot, but my mom was pushing for, engineering and, aerospace engineering at Brooklyn Tech. So it's definitely a lot of a lot of conflict, a lot of confusion. And it kind of sucks because I had no one to talk to. I can only text or call people, but it's not the same as, doing something face to face or talking. So that's how I describe it.
Yeah, especially since you belong to a community of immigrants. You're an immigrant. I'm an immigrant.
Yeah.
So that adds maybe a little perhaps a sense of not feeling like you belong when no one really feels like they belong because there's nothing to belong to during the pandemic. But I feel like that might be like an exacerbatory factor.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was lucky though. I did make a group of friends, like group of three friends that I'm still friends with to this day. And in a way, it's because of COVID and because of that shared, I don't want to say trauma, but shared kind of conflict and shared kind of anxiety from COVID and everything that we're still friends to this day, like how many years later, like 4 or 5 years later, going to college.
Grace used the term trauma bonding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Well, shout out to her. She's the one that came up with it. And what's her name? Also, Nafisa also agreed, and it sounds like you're agreeing too. That
Yeah.
knowing that you're all going through the same sort of issue, even though in different ways, of course, is something that I guess unites people.
Yeah, and that's how I kind of coped with moving on to college and, becoming adult in exactly a month from now, actually. I'll be turning 18 in a month from now. And
Mhm.
it's like, I'm not the only one, everyone else is also turning into adult.
Right. So we've kind of covered seventh grade with the pandemic all the way up until I guess ninth, 10th grade as as lockdowns were, you know, ending and masks were coming off and all of that sort of jazz. Let me ask you, in the time in which you were a little freshie in my class to, AP Lang in 11th grade to now as someone who just, passed through the finish line of being a high school student at Brooklyn Tech, what do you think has changed within you? What are sort of the biggest kind of like developments in your life? How have you grown as an individual?
Yeah. I think as soon as I took off the mask, instantly a lot more extroverted, a lot more social. I realized that because of COVID, I'm very used to texting all the time, and
Hmm.
I'd say a better texter than I was a talker in person, especially freshman year through sophomore year. But then as we moved into junior year and, the latter half of sophomore year when the masks start coming off and I started actually, being confident with my face and started talking more, I genuinely became more sociable. I got a lot more friends. I didn't rely on my phone at all. And I definitely think that's the biggest change between the first 2 years and the last 2 years of high school. I feel like I've definitely developed socially, just, being friends with everyone or being like, cool with everyone, so to speak.
Yeah. So you led with your chin. You kept your chin up.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Yeah.
Susanna taught me a word, and it's mask fishing.
Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah,
That's
for
such an
sure.
interesting concept.
Yeah, that was definitely a topic that was going around sophomore year when people started, transitioning from masks on to masks off, and getting to see getting to see people's faces for the first time was definitely a surreal experience.
Right. This is more of a question of consistency, really, but Brooklyn Tech is an extremely difficult school. There's so many things going on, and it's very much like college light for people, not just because we have majors, but just of the fact that you're in a massive environment, 6,000 plus students. Everyone has some sort of, I'm going to go out on a limb and say like a genius to them that they've already sort of begun to tap into to some degree, at the very least at getting into the school. So my question is, in such an environment and with the backdrop of COVID and all of these things, how did you, Demyan, keep yourself afloat? How did you keep yourself grounded? How did you keep yourself sort of motivated to continue despite the difficulties and challenges?
Yeah, no, I'd say it's initially difficult, and I felt like, and especially in the first couple years of high school, I didn't really have a reason to keep on going. It is something that my parents wanted, and I was like, whatever my parents want, that's what's best. But as time moved on, I've kind of developed passion for learning and school overall. Um, for example, if there's like a class that I didn't like, I found something in that class that I liked and I hooked myself onto it to keep myself engaged. And subconsciously, I began doing that with everything, and I ended up being interested in nearly every single class in some capacity. And that's what kind of kept me afloat and kept me going in those difficult classes. But I think also being very college minded, especially at a younger age, I started touring colleges as soon as sophomore year. So I already understood the importance of kind of taking everything very seriously. And that's definitely what kept me rolling throughout the years.
It helps to sort of understand what the goal looks like, I guess specifically because it becomes real. You think, oh, I want to be a college student. And it becomes kind of an abstract, sort of nebulous thing until you're at a campus looking at what it looks like and what it takes to be at these kinds of schools. So that's interesting that's one of the mechanisms to know the finish line, what it looks like.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Do you remember what the very first assignment was in ninth grade, in our ninth grade class?
It was like a intro letter, right?
Hmm.
Wrote a letter. You wrote a letter to us, to the class, and we wrote back individual letters back to
Right,
you.
right. And my goal is basically not only to get to know all of you a little bit beforehand, but also to sort of shape the classroom based on, I guess, like your identities. So if a lot of you like science fiction, or a lot of you like a story that has elements of fantasy or things of that sort, I can kind of weave the class in that direction. Or if
Hmm.
you want to learn about, I don't know, politics, geopolitics, it's like, oh, okay, well, this will be good for Socratic seminars and things of that sort. And because I've had you twice, I can juxtapose your freshman letter with your AP Lang 11th
Sure,
grade
yeah.
letter, and I'll read them out to you one by one, and then I'll tell you
Okay, sure. All right.
what someone like me ascertains from that sort of juxtaposition.
Okay, sure.
The one of like the incipient sentences in your first letter in ninth grade is looking back to my childhood, which by the way, I love a ninth grader saying that. It's amazing.
I'm still a child back then, like
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah. As a very brief, before I continue, as a very brief side note, 2 years ago I had a student in my classroom. She's a freshman, and she was talking to a boy who just got his heart broken, and she said, she said, "Don't worry, I've been single for like 2 years." And she's a ninth grader, and I was like, "What the hell?" Just it was just like in the corner of my classroom, and I was like, "What? What's going on?"
2 years. It was
Yeah,
before the 2 years.
I was just mind blown. But anyway,
It's
but going
hilarious.
back to this to baby Damien. So it was looking back to my childhood. I always appreciated a challenge. And then you mentioned later that one of your goals is to be less shy. That's later in the same paragraph. In your AP Lang introduction, you wrote greetings from a land where water polo meets Russian flair and model tanks march alongside creative escapades. And I was like, wow, that sounds so much more like the Damien that I know
Yeah.
right now. And I think it has to do with like the confidence and self-expression and sort of deviating from the most standard orthodox way of introducing yourself. And that requires kind of emergence of confidence and creativity, not separately, but
Yeah, yeah.
together.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely I think between writing in my freshman year class with you and then my junior year class, I think getting that confidence post COVID mask, post, COVID everything definitely impacted my writing style. Yeah, for sure. And like hearing that, I'm like, wow, I forgot I wrote those letters and just hearing back, like that's it's mega true, mega true.
It reminded me of your project in freshman year where you had an independent reading, and I told you, you have to track the plot, and you being you chose Slaughterhouse Five, which is an extremely difficult book to track the plot.
I still talk about that book to all my friends to this day. Like I still recommend it to everyone. It's such a
It's a phenomenal
yeah,
book.
it's truly, truly.
Looking back, I always appreciated a challenge, and like you chose, I would argue, one of the most challenging books for the specific task of trying to map out the plot, especially if you have any fidelity to chronology,
Yeah.
becomes very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, going on to your last thing that you asked me actually about the, liking being challenged, that's just how I've always been with everything. Especially my senior year, I've always liked kind of trying to get to the zenith of my abilities, like seeing how far I can push myself. And I'm
Mm.
typically a pretty slow learner, which doesn't go well. I'd say slow learner as in it takes me a long time to digest something and to fully understand
Okay,
it, not as in,
I was gonna push back on
yeah,
that.
not as in
Okay,
like I'm intellectually slow or something, but
yeah.
I take a lot of time to absorb everything around me, and that often combats with my desire to kind of push myself to the max. Like taking the hardest courses or taking a harder writing course, for instance, with the AP Lang.
Even water polo, I feel like
Yeah.
is a sport that kind of challenges one's well, what would you call it, like parameters.
Yeah, definitely. Just like everything around me, like even the video games that I used to play, and I play chess nowadays just because I think it's a nice, brain teaser and difficult to solve. But even the video games that I play are typically games that require, a lot of skill to be good at, and I really
Mm,
kind of appreciate climbing that mountain of, getting better eventually, self-improving every time you
yeah,
play.
strategizing and things of that
That's
sort,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember back when I was in high school and I would, we would play video games and things of that sort. And there was one kid in our school who always like put the cheat codes in at like the very beginning of the game so that he would be basically like a god mode or boss mode or whatever. I always wondered why someone would do that.
No,
It's
yeah,
like,
I there's like no joy in that, you know? It's because it's not genuine. You're like, if you're trash at a video game, then just like, it's okay.
yeah, even worse than it's not joyous, it actually spoils any potential of joy because
Yeah.
once you're at the finish line, it's very tough to go back to the very beginning and then go through it again. It's like after a deadline, it's well, in psychologists call it the what the heck effect, but they don't always use that word.
Yeah.
Um, but it's basically like if you make one little like mistake in a pursuit, some people are just like, oh, well, you know what, forget it. And the way they talk about this is in like diet culture.
Mhm.
They cheat on their diet once when they didn't really want to.
Oh, and then yeah, they just give up for the rest of it.
Yeah, and then they dive into like a chocolate cake and they're like, I give up. But yeah, I never understood that. But there's facing a challenge, and then there's people who seek the challenges, who actively look for, well, what's the hardest choice? Not because they're trying to flex or anything like that. There's another experiment done with kids in basketball where they had them shoot at the foul line, at the 3 point line, and then basically at half court. And the students who had, kind of low confidence would go to the foul line. Students with a little bit more confidence would go to the 3 point line, and students with very low confidence would go to half court because they are preemptively losing.
Yeah, yeah, I have an excuse. I might as well, look like make it look like I'm skilled by going all the way back.
Right. And the completely different approaches towards life, and it's not really self confidence; it's self efficacy. Your belief that you can accomplish a task.
Yeah.
And it's good to develop the mindset of like, oh, it's okay if I lose, as long as I try as hard as I
Correct.
can, and maybe I could even try again and be a little bit better.
On that point, I don't know if you know this teacher, but I had her for 2 years since junior year. Her name is Miss Kaufman,
Hmm.
and she gave me advice. I really suck at coding, honestly. Over like the past 2 years, it's probably a shame that I'm, doing robotics and I suck at coding. But I felt very bad about it. I was very behind on all these coding projects, and she just told me this story about when she was on this track team, and she was the worst runner there, the slowest of all time, and it was her senior year, and she told the coach she wants to quit, and the coach told her, Rachel, someone has to be the worst. And she told me, like, in coding, in the class, every single classroom, someone has to be the hypothetical worst so and so. And I took that and I was like, you know what? Maybe you're right. It's okay if, I suck at this. Someone has to be hypothetically the worst person in the room. So I'll do it proudly, like, it's me. So what?
It's like the if you're the smartest person in the room, seek another room, but like the inversion of that.
Yeah. Like, I think maybe Napoleon said it or something, but it was like a smart man always surrounds
Yeah,
himself with smarter people. Something like that quote. That's
very good.
reminds me
And
of.
that means that you're seeking a challenge. That's great. And
Right, yeah.
speaking of seeking a challenge, I mean Northeastern, tough school to get into, tough school altogether. You have about 21,000 people at the school, but as someone who graduated with 6,000, oh, in a school of 6,000 people, that might
Yeah,
not,
yeah. Class
yeah,
1500.
1,500,
So
right?
yeah. I
Yeah.
think so, yeah. That sounds right.
That might not be too intimidating, but you're studying mechanical engineering and design, which that's a dual BS ME.
Yeah, it's like a
Mhm.
combined major. So it's like I want to say it's combined minor. They don't like to say combined major because it's not I'm not taking classes to have like two different majors, but they definitely combine classes from the School of Design into the
Right.
engineering.
Look, what do you anticipate for the future? Like, what are your expectations? When you look at the like proverbial horizon, what do you see? What do you
Yeah.
expect? What are you hoping for?
Honestly, it feels really weird because I'm gonna restart, I'm gonna prestige. I'm gonna be a freshman again. And as soon as I finished being a senior, I'm gonna be a freshman all over again. So it feels a little weird to me that I'm gonna be again like the noob, being like that's it. Like I don't know anything again about college. But I definitely one thing I do expect, I know in general, and according to online consensus, and mechanical engineering is gonna kick my ass. With all the math, chemistry, and physics. And I know it's gonna be difficult, but that's kind of why I've prepared for that. I've tried taking harder physics classes and math classes, just so I can prepare myself mentally for that. But I know no matter what, that as long as I got through tech, I think I can probably, at least scrape by Northeastern, and as long as, people say C's get degrees, I'm gonna try to get a B at least. But I know I feel like I know I'll make it. And honestly, college is also very flexible from what people tell me. So if it's really not meant to be, then I can always go to business. That's the pipeline, I mean,
Oh
that's
man, if
okay.
I have any business majors on, they're gonna be like, "What did Damien say?"
Well, I'm not trying to say business is easier, but like definitely,
Uh huh.
um, I think that would be like my second choice. At post college, I think I'll definitely go to business
Hmm.
school. So
We're gonna cut that out and try and make it sound like an insult.
okay.
uh, well, I mean, you do seek challenges, and I guess if you have the mindset that everything that's hitting you, everything that's like trying to like hit you all at once, if you have that mindset, like, oh, I want this struggle and this stress and all of these things. If you can balance that with understanding that you do need moments to like relax and recover and things of that sort, then I think you'll be golden. The same way that some people entering tech probably thought like, oh, you know, I can maybe get B's and C's, and then they end up with a 98 plus GPA, and getting a 5 out of 5 on the AP Lang exam, thinking that they might not be like the most um, you know, excellent writer or anything of that sort. And then they do. So, maybe you having this mindset is a humble and grounded way to explore what the challenges are going to be, and making sure that you're not very like lofty in your ideas.
Yeah, I think definitely staying humble is the way to go. Like if you get messed up by a test, then it's okay. Just recover, you know, I'll be fine, but definitely try again and try harder.
And this kind of, I guess, leads to the last question that I have for you, which is basically, I mean, there's going to be, I think a lot of tech students and a lot of high school students are probably going to be watching this video. What sort of advice or guidance or suggestions or wisdom can you impart to them as someone who's now just passing the finish line, huffing and puffing and ready to enjoy the summer?
I think tech is definitely very college orientated, so I'll give advice on college and the college process because I think it's incredibly important to understand how it happens. And to put it into a very small bubble, the way I describe the college process is no matter how good of a student you are, no matter what you've done extracurriculars, no matter if you volunteered across the world, no matter if you have a 110 GPA or like valedictorian of your all 4 years of your class, there is still a pretty good chance you won't get into the school you want to get into. And this is because ultimately it's lottery. You can be an incredible student, but you might not get in. And the best way to approach the college process, especially for sophomore, and people in junior year, is to imagine every single thing that you put into your application as a lottery ticket. Now, each lottery ticket has the same 1 in a billion chance or 1 in 100 chance, but the more lottery tickets you have able to give to the admissions officer, the better chance you have. So having a good SAT, having a good GPA, letter of references, having good classes, these are all, I guess, actual lottery tickets, but each of them have the same percentage of helping you get into the school that you want to get into. Does that make sense the way I described?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's extremely
Yeah,
wise. I
and
love
yeah,
that.
and ultimately, you could have 20 of these lottery tickets, and other people might have one lottery ticket, and Cornell might not accept you, and that's okay. And then the person next to you might have half a lottery ticket, and they somehow got in, and it's okay.
So one student who's applying and they're showing their one or two, quote to quote you, like lottery tickets of like a high GPA and standardized test score, but they also did some work in drama at their school, or they played or they play an instrument that they haven't really foregrounded much because I don't know, they're shy, or they think it's
Yeah,
not meaningful enough or anything of that sort. Like push these things forward.
yeah. Being different is super important. I think I definitely learned that getting a writing voice, incredibly important. I learned that from your AP Lang, but class, having a voice, a genuine voice in your writing, incredibly important. Admissions officers only look at your paper for like 10 seconds, And if it's another
Yes.
NPC paper about how you broke a leg, or I don't know, the immigrant story,
Yeah.
it's not gonna cut the chase, you know? It's better to
Yeah.
just be genuine. And you'll feel a lot better
Right.
about it too.
Yeah, because then they'll be accepting you
Who you are.
for a genuine
Yeah.
component of you.
And if that school doesn't want you, then why don't fray if they don't, like, you know, why do you want to go to a school that doesn't want you? Don't fray about it, you
Right.
know? If Cornell doesn't want you,
And it's not even that they don't want you. They're rejecting perhaps little components together that make up a potential collage of you.
yeah.
That's not you.
Yeah, it's just like a tiny introspection of who you are as a person through a piece of paper of a person
Right.
who read that paper that you'll never see ever in your life. Doesn't
Right.
define you.
And they might have had a bad sandwich
Yeah,
that is like messing their GI tract as they're reading
literally,
your.
and yeah, that's another good point, that your admissions officer might have literally just
Yeah.
woken up on the wrong leg, and they
Right.
just were in a bad mood, and that's, you know, you can't do anything about it.
It kind of reminds me there's obviously like a million different fields in psychology, and one of the newest ones is called positive psychology, and they focus, instead of like treating maladies and things of that sort, they focus more on people who are a positive 6, and why not try and figure out how to make yourself a positive 7, 8, 9, 10. And the person who pioneered it, who was also became the president of the American Psychological Association, his name was Martin Seligman, and he pointed out that the people who develop a pessimistic mindset, one of the things that they do is they take things personally. They make negative information pervasive and permanent. And the pervasive part is especially relevant to this, because if I am rejected from a journal that I'm applying to, that I'm trying to get published in for a psychology paper, I can think, okay, well, they rejected me. They rejected my mind. They rejected my contributions. Ergo, my contributions are meaningless. They're pointless, and I'm dumb, and I can't do these things.
Yeah.
So it spreads into all these other like data points, which is not what happened at all.
Yeah. I definitely, through the college process, it's better to be a realist than a pessimist. And I don't really know how any of these things work, you know, like these kind of like schools of philosophy, but I definitely think being a
Psychology.
realist, meaning, yeah, like, don't like, I was telling my girlfriend about this. I was telling her, you shouldn't be confident that you'll get in, but be confident in your chance of getting in. So that way you don't set yourself up for eventually, you at least get one rejection, right? So eventually when you do get rejected, you don't feel personally attacked. Just be confident in the chance that you have.
Awesome. That's great advice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Damien. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
And our last guest, another student from Brooklyn Tech, is Gadin Aggarwal, who is studying business at Carnegie Mellon. Gadin, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon.
So I know you have a little bit of a cough, so we're gonna try and muscle through it. Same question to start off, which is essentially asking about sort of what was going through your mind as a baby Gadin, 7th grader, COVID, pandemic, remote learning, everything just being sort of kind of chaotic. What was sort of going through your mind as a middle and early high schooler?
Yeah, I would say like definitely something that I thought about when COVID happened. It was like, how do you even prepare for this in a way? Like, there's nothing that the DOE could have possibly done to have like, prepared themselves for an epidemic that's going to take over the entire world. It was I believe it was the middle of March, and we just got an email to our phones that were like, oh, classes are canceled for a week. This COVID-19 virus is spreading out, and in order to mitigate the spread, we don't want students to come back to school. So we're like, okay, that's fine. 1 week of school, it's like a break. But that week kind of kept going on and on and on. And, I never even technically got to finish my 7th grade year. Teachers kind of just started posting things online, like assignments and videos, but they were never graded. So it was kind of like, I'm just sitting at home doing nothing with no expectations for my teachers, no expectations for my parents. And quite frankly, I didn't really have any expectations on myself, because I was like, what do I expect of myself in this case? Like, am I supposed to go study on myself? Am I supposed to expect myself to complete my 7th grade on my own? Like, it was a unique experience in a way. It's like no one was really prepared for this to happen in any way.
You think it was a common experience that essentially students at the very beginning were excited that this prospect of potentially something that seemed akin to a vacation?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I saw it at first. I don't know, a lot of my friends in my school as well saw it that way. So it was like, you know, we have 1 week off of school, let's go enjoy it. And then that week just kind of turned into a month, and then the rest of the school year. And then it was kind of sad in a way. Like, we never got to see our friends again, at least for seventh grade. We didn't get to go into school buildings, things like that.
Oh, that's interesting because so March is pretty far into the school year, of course. You're more than halfway done with the school year when you're in March. And middle school is 2 years for most students. Some have a 3-year middle school because they have sixth grade sometimes. And
Yeah.
so then you said a lot of you never saw your middle school friends again after that. Wow.
Yeah. So my middle school was a little different. I had a sixth grade. It was in a different building. So, obviously we did our sixth grade and everything. Seventh grade was in a different building with the seventh and eighth graders. So it kind of felt like, you graduated in a way to the upper school. But we never actually really got to go into that upper school in seventh grade. I mean, we were there until March, and that was kind of it. And then for eighth grade, what they did for us was they kind of separated it in between online learning and in-person or hybrid. So they picked a couple of students, and I was one of those students that they picked to do hybrid. So we would kind of come into school maybe two or 3 days out of the week, and then the other 2 days would be online. But eventually what they did was they made that hybrid class come fully in person every day. But normally you'd expect 30 students to be in your class, right? But in my school, it was only 12. And that was only in person. Everyone else was like the 30 student classes. That was all happening online. So it was just me.
Would it be at the same time then?
Yes. So it kind of performed exactly how you would expect in high school, right? You have your English teacher, you have your science teacher, your math teacher. So while we're learning math, the online students might be learning English, right? Or science or Spanish or something like that.
That's so odd. So would attendance be like some students were digitally in the classroom and some students were physically in the classroom?
Yeah, pretty much. So sometimes what would happen is if 2 classes happen at the same time, we would be in person learning with the actual teacher who has a computer in front of himself teaching the classes online as well as in person. Yeah. It was kind of a unique experience though, because it felt like us being in person, we had more freedom in a way. Because we were able to physically interact with other people. We went to the park sometimes after school to hang out. We would actually, physically be interacting with our teachers, writing stuff in our notebooks and on the board and things like that.
That's so interesting because I think most people, when they're saying that being in school was more freedom, that's a very rare sort of sentence that you can orchestrate.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Wow, man. So then 4 years as a high school student at Brooklyn Tech with 6,000 students. How do you think you've developed as a freshman, ninth grader in my class, all the way up until kind of crossing through the finish line as a graduating senior?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but your first year at Tech was the same as my first year during high school, correct?
My freshman year as well, yeah.
Right. So, right, exactly. So that was kind of something I was thinking about when you brought up this podcast was I was like, coming into high school, what did we expect? Because this was our first actual full year of learning after COVID. And I remember very well, it was the first or second day of school, walking into your class. I actually hadn't known that this was your first year, but you kind of embodied everything that I would have wanted in a teacher coming into high school for the first time. Because you didn't have any expectations either, right? This was your first time. And it's not like the DOE has a handbook. After COVID, this is how you're supposed to teach kids. Everyone's kind of coming in, different experiences. They have learned different things. Some had in person, some didn't have in person. Some were online for 3 years, some weren't. So I would say definitely coming into your class was really helpful. It really kind of brought us all together and put us back into that learning environment that we're supposed to get used to going into the next 4 years. I will say one good thing that kind of came out of COVID for me was after that seventh grade year where it's like I didn't really learn much. I kind of put that expectation on myself that I should be wanting to learn these things on my own. So if it's not taught to me by my teachers, then I should go out of my way and try and learn it. If it's living environments, for example, right? If I'm not learning as much as I think I should be in class, I'm going to go out of my way and learn that on my own, because even though I'm in person, maybe some of the more, online students are getting more attention, for example, right? So I kind of put that on my own. So I kind of brought that into me with high school, where it's like I'm coming into these classes, but at the same time, I want to actually be learning something. So it's not like I'm not getting all the attention, everyone's getting an equal amount of attention in this case. So I really want to go out of my way, learn these things on my own. So I guess the good way to put it was like it brought me a good sense of, I guess, persistence, like, stepping out of my comfort zone in a way.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, very, very self-directed. I know that from your, do you remember your very first assignment in my class?
Was it a book? It had something to do with a book, I think.
It was,
Or it was the summer reading assignment.
kind of before that. Well, I guess technically that's true, but it was you were to. So I wrote a letter that I basically spoke to all of you, and then your first assignment was to write a letter back to me introducing yourself. And as I like reflect on what your letter contained, you were mentioning that you want to pursue something that where you want to be at a university where you'll be able to essentially you'll be able to sort of strengthen your tech knowledge and something that's hands-on. But the thing that you already mentioned was you wanted to be an AI engineer. And hearing that, back in 2020, when it was obviously AI, the idea of AI has existed for a very long time, more than a century actually. But before the sort of the tsunami wave of ChatGPT and all the other sort of miscellaneous AI systems, it's very interesting to see that. And now you've flourished into sort of doing so many things in terms of robotics, in terms of sort of all the things that you're doing. I want to ask you, as you're going through all these developments and ensuring that a lot of it is self-directed, partially facilitated by COVID, the one positive of COVID for you, as you've articulated. While doing all the things you did, and please, I guess for the podcast, can you remind us what specifically your position is at the robotics team? But I want to ask you, how did you maintain like a sense of resilience and groundedness at such a hyper-competitive school with also all the things going on in the background?
My position on the robotics team was the president. I guess in a way, robotics was kind of the root of my 4 years of high school, and it definitely kept me on track. It kept me focused on everything I did. So coming in freshman year, right, COVID was a severe impact on our team because our team relied on, a cycle of knowledge that was passed on from student from year after year, right? So not having those 2.5 years of school, that seriously broke that cycle of knowledge that was being transferred. So my freshman year was kind of like, we're starting over from scratch, right? We're rebuilding all of that fundamental knowledge that was supposed to already be there when I got there. So that was kind of the role I took on. I essentially rebuilt the team in a way. We restarted the recycle and mentorship. And I guess throughout the 4 years, me being able to see that I've done that kind of put me in a position that's like, yeah, I know I can succeed at this school no matter what I do because I know I have it in me, whatever it takes to go out there and literally build from scratch whatever I need to do in order to succeed at this school.
That's so interesting. So there's the idea of self-efficacy and self-confidence, and this distinguishing was, I guess, pioneered by Dr. Albert Bandura. Self-efficacy is one's sentiment that they can accomplish a specific thing, a specific task, a specific obligation. Self-confidence is the overarching assuredness that one possesses. The former helps lay the foundation for the latter. And the latter is obviously, again, if you have a lot of the latter, then you feel a sense of self-efficacy towards a bunch of things. But it's interesting. So you succeeded in this pretty complex endeavor. I mean, whenever I passed by the robotics room, I would see you there, and obviously I would come by and bother you guys. But it was always interesting to see you guys just laboring away. Sometimes I would stay till over an hour after school was over, and I'd see, and you would still be there with this team. And every year that room was more and more crowded. So it's clearly a testament that you sort of magnetized people forward. So I would also say that you've kind of proven yourself to be a leader, and in doing that also you feel that you can take the next step because you've already led before. Leading yourself is I would I would say, probably easier than leading a team of 20 individual members. How many people were at the robotics team by your senior year?
Around 55.
Yeah. So that's what. Oh my God. I mean, congratulations. That's so impressive, and I hope that you're proud of that, because I think that every single person that you led feels perhaps a greater sense of certainty in themselves, and maybe a greater sense of self-efficacy, having a momentum that you sort of casted. So, congratulations on that.
It's funny you mentioned that. They gave me this award.
That is fantastic and very, very fitting, by the way. Amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
You very much deserve that.
Thank you.
I guess the last question that I have, or I guess the penultimate question, what are your sort of anticipations for the future? I mean, you're entering a pretty solid school. It's, I believe, number 2 for business undergrad in the United States. I think number 1 is MIT, but it's like the highest in terms of management info systems. It's number 2 in terms of business analytics. There's so many things going on at this university. What do you see on the horizon? What are your goals, aims, expectations? What's going on in your mind for the future?
Yeah, so this actually came to a surprise to many people because, I'm the robotics kid. So most likely I'm supposed to be going into robotics or engineering. I really want to break into the finance field, which someone with not an incredible amount of experience in the field coming into it might be kind of hard to break into. But I know, my family's backgrounds, everyone's accountants. My sister's a finance student, so I definitely have the support with me. I think my ultimate goal for Carnegie Mellon is to definitely set myself up with a good career in finance. The good thing about Carnegie Mellon is that they have this, I guess, overarching academy in a way that breaks into each and every one of the individual fields that you can possibly go into finance. So that's something I definitely want to look into my freshman year, joining that academy and kind of exploring my options in a way, see what's available in a way. Sales and trading, investment banking, asset management, different fields that I could possibly go into. So I want to join, I want to, experiment, see what I like. And then after 4 years, I can put myself on a steady track to kind of, set up the rest of my life.
Right. I mean, when I looked at the Tepper school, one of the things that they were mentioning or sort of like bragging about, and it seems they've earned this kind of bragging rights, is that they're kind of intersecting AI, psychology, all of these other fields around business, and I think that's incredibly useful and important. So I mean, I can't wait to see what your future holds, and obviously keep in touch with that, because I want to celebrate and champion the milestones you have in the future. My last question for you is what is your sort of wisdom or guidance that you can impart for the next generation of high school students, and I guess even students in middle school now, going into the next stage. So if you were to speak to the next batch of freshies, for example, entering a competitive environment, nervous about all the things around them, or an 11th grader who just finished AP Lang, or anything of the sort, what's like the most central, most focal guidance that you can provide?
This might be ironic because, now is like the boom of AI, but I'd say, especially for incoming freshmen, don't rely as much as you should on ChatGPT. It's funny I say this because I use ChatGPT all the time, but not in the sense like, oh, here's my assignment, write it for me, give me my answer, and then I'll submit what you give me. I use it more as like a tool, what's a good idea, or, help me make a study guide. What are some points that I should cover for my upcoming, biology exam? Use it in that sense, not in the way like, oh, here's what my teacher told me. How do I do this? Just give me the answer. I'll put it into my, answer book. In terms of juniors, I would say definitely do not procrastinate. on college applications. I myself started pretty early, but my early was already very late compared to other people. So definitely when your summer comes, you should be drafting IT. I know your class already does this.
Yeah, we were making college essays in freshman year,
Right,
and I
exactly.
mean, I still remember yours. Yours was so cool. It would go back and forth between you sort of piloting an aircraft and like opining on the greater picture of the success and failure, or failure and success.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I'd say definitely keep in touch with Mr. Armin as well. Ask for as much advice. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
I'm going to be coming back all the time and helping the people in robotics as much as I possibly can. So it's like, don't worry. There's always going to be people there to ask to like help you. So definitely ask as many questions as possible.
Gadin, thank you so much for coming on to the Universal podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Armin.